Plans were drawn and concrete poured, nail by nail and board by board. Daddy gave life to Mama's dream. I thought if I could touch this place so freely, this brokenness inside me might start healing.
So here it is, the infamous Draw My Life tag. I know a lot of you were requesting it, so this one is for you. It all started back in the late 70s, early 80s, when my mom, Jody, luckily had ended her engagement with her first fiance. He was a tattoo artist and he was in love with my mom, but he was also a lot older than her, and he definitely pleaded for her to stay with him, but she was insistent and said no and decided to move on with her life. He was really upset with that decision because he had her face tattooed on his arm, and still to this day he still has it there, and yes, I've seen it. So it wasn't until a few months later that my dad saw my mom for the first time. He was with a bunch of his friends and they were all headed into some bar that they go to all the time. When he walked in, he saw my mother, who was working behind the bar as a bartender, and he remembered saying she was the most beautiful girl he's ever seen and telling all his friends that he will marry that girl. He told me that it took forever for her to agree to go on a date with him, that he would continuously ask and she would just say, no thank you, I'm fine. And then eventually she did agree to go on a date with him, which is a great thing because a few years later came my sister. She was hands down the cutest baby in the world, and I'm not just saying that because she's my sister. Then 2 years and 8 months later, out comes me, Carli Bybel, on October 17th, 1990. Yes, my middle name is Sue. Coincidentally enough, I have naturally curly hair, so I was always called Curly Sue when I was little. Not too fond of that. My sister and I grew up in Howell, New Jersey in a pretty house until I was in kindergarten. While our new house was getting built, I remember living in this tiny one-bedroom apartment with my family, and it was quite cozy. What's funny about this place is the only thing I vividly remember was getting home one day and I wasn't able to take off my own boots. I remember my sister trying to pull them off so hard that I was literally being shaken upside down in the air. After a few hard tugs, I did get them off, luckily, because I can't imagine what life would be like if I had to chop off my feet. After a few months, our house was finally built and we all moved from our one-bedroom apartment to what seemed like the most beautiful house in the world. We had a humongous backyard, which we later filled with a trampoline, a swing set, a pool, a deck, everything you could ever want as a kid. In my basement, we also had a movie theater built in one of the rooms, and it was this big projector screen that came down from the ceiling. It was pretty high-tech for 1997. Soon after we moved in, I became best friends, basically sisters, with my next-door neighbors. My childhood years were spent either in my backyard, their backyard, or at a horse ranch. I was so extremely allergic to horses, but I would go anyway. That was definitely my passion growing up. So despite all the allergies, my dad and I would still go trail riding on the weekends. We would have way too much fun and break way too many rules. But he also played guitar all the time and would make me sing along with him. We definitely wrote a song. I could probably remember it if I actually sat down and thought about it. But moments like that were some of the best of my childhood, and I really will never ever forget those moments. From as far back as I can remember, we would always go on 1 or 2 vacations a year with my family. The Atlantis in the Bahamas was always one of our favorite go-to spots. Looking back now, it's crazy how truly blessed I was as a child. My dad started his own glass business from his garage in Howell, and it turned into a very huge, successful company. He had a very hard life growing up, so he decided to make a change, and he turned out very successful for a while. My middle school years were all kinds of ups and downs. I remember multiple times going home crying on the bus because all of the boys in the back would torture me, calling me all kinds of mean names. I swear I wish I could go back and give them all a piece of my mind. So yeah, middle school, like I said, had its ups and downs. Luckily, going into 6th grade, I met my best friend of now 11 years, Nicole. We were inseparable from the start. In middle school, I had all different groups of friends, though. We used to hang out in my basement and make videos of us pretending to be famous singers and mimicking different movies. We would also call different hotlines. Who knows what we would even say. Side note, ignore the boys in middle school because they're all immature and don't really mean anything that they say. Believe me, I was called every name in the book, but it's usually because they like you. Sick games we all play, right? At the end of my 8th grade year was when we lost someone big in our family. My Aunt Karen, who was my mom's older sister, passed away out of nowhere, which was a big loss for our family. We do miss her every single day, but I know she is watching over us. Moving on to high school, I was actually pretty excited because my sister was a senior when I was coming in. So right off the bat, I was pretty happy about moving on to the new school. She drove me every day, so it was a nice way to ease myself into the changes. I joined the cheer team in high school, which was then my 5th year cheering. I met a lot of fun girls and we had some really amazing times together. Of course, I like reminiscing on all the good, but of course there were countless days where I would come home and cry and be so upset with myself. People would make fun of me, they would make up stories, the same thing that most people deal with in high school. It would honestly put me into little stages of depression. I was always questioning the way I looked and my weight. I was always thin as a child, so when I gained a few pounds, I was very hard on myself. But throughout it all, I always kept a smile on my face and promised myself I would never let anyone bring me down. The end of my freshman year, I met my first boyfriend, Mike, who was in a band at the time. I remember being so swooned by him. We dated for about 2.5 years, but we ended up going our separate ways. My first job was Starbucks, which was really awesome. My sister had worked there for over a year, so she put in a good word for me. I loved it there. It was a great atmosphere and really taught me good work ethic. The end of my junior year, my home life started to change drastically. My parents were fighting too much, and my sister and I really started to feel the tension. My dad eventually left, and that led to an oh-so-lovely divorce. It was really hard on me and my sister because we were constantly put in the middle of their bickering. There were lawsuits involved, jail time for not paying child support, the whole deal. I just remember being a very dark time in my life, and I remember feeling completely separated from my dad. I felt pressure from my mom that I shouldn't be talking to him because of everything he had done to us. Eventually, my dad ended up moving down to Florida where he started a new life with his girlfriend Lucy. I remember feeling really abandoned because I didn't understand why he couldn't just do what he was supposed to do as a father. He just left us to go across the country where I knew I would never be able to see him. I was in a very low place for a while because growing up, my dad was always my best friend, always the one I would go to with my problems and the one who would always make me laugh. I would feel extreme tension from my mom, who would always ask 100 questions if I ever did pick up a phone call from my dad. Without going into any more details, let's just leave it at I barely talked to him after a certain point because it was just too much to deal with. I remember the end of my junior year, I also started my own business doing freelance hair and makeup. This really helped me keep my mind off the family problems, and it was a way for me to create new things for myself. I went out and had business cards made and I put them out all over my town. Since I was a cheerleader, I knew a lot of girls and they all loved how I would do my makeup, so the clients did come pretty easy. It wasn't until after I graduated high school that I got my first job doing official hair and makeup, and it was for a photography studio in the mall. And I remember being just so proud and so excited for myself because I never did have a degree in this, and I got this job all by myself. Unfortunately, that fairy tale ended real quick. I realized that the job was not at all what I had hoped for. My boss was such an asshole, and he was always yelling at us, and he was so demeaning and condescending, and he really made me feel small. So as I was finally realizing that this job maybe wasn't for me, my house ended up having to get sold due to the lack of money coming in from my father. So we had to sell it to an older couple, and what really upset me was that they had no kids and they weren't planning on having kids. So to me it was like, what was the point of creating this gorgeous house for a family when there's not even be a family living there? What I failed to realize that it was so many other things that were bothering me. I had just lost my car, I just lost my house, my dad was gone, my sister was away at school, my amazing job turned out to be horrible, and I hated my boss. I just felt like everything around me was literally falling apart. Although I wasn't happy, I stayed at the photography studio a little bit longer, and I was still doing my freelancing, and I also had a job at a golf course. And although I was putting all my time and energy in working and yet still going away to college, I felt there was still not enough money coming in. And on top of it, I had no time for schoolwork. So at this point in my life, I just felt so trapped, and I felt that no matter how much I did or what I did, nothing would get better. So I figured maybe getting rid of one job would help me distress a little bit, so I decided to quit the photography studio, and it was a nice relief to get out of there and to tell him that I no longer wanted to work for him. But soon after that, bill after bill after bill all started piling up, and I had my mom on my back telling me I need to help pay for things around the house and pay all my bills and yet get straight A's in school and still have more jobs, and I just honestly didn't know what else I could do or what else I could handle. I was only 20 years old. So at that point in time, I think that was really my breaking point. I decided to pack all of my stuff and head down to Florida to live with my dad. And of course, there was really no thought put into it. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I just woke up, packed my stuff, and headed down to Florida. I remember giving myself two decisions, and it was either I stay here and I watch everything around me fail and stay miserable, or I head down to Florida and start over and start a new life with my dad, and he always made me happy, so that would definitely solve all my problems. So as expected, it did not solve anything. You can't run away from your problems, so I headed back up to New Jersey only 2 weeks later. I struggled for a little bit, and then it wasn't until one night out in October I bumped into Samantha Morales, my current best friend. And what was funny is we went to high school together and we knew each other from high school, but we never actually hung out until this one night in New York City. So what was really cool was after that night we realized we were only 10 minutes from each other, so we did start hanging out on a regular basis, and we did start talking about all kinds of things, trying to figure out what we want to do with our lives and how we can make changes in better ways to become better people. And I remember vividly one night sitting on our roof, and we were talking to each other, and we were trying to figure out, what are we going to be doing with our lives? Where do we want to be in 5 years? How can we make our dreams a reality? And it wasn't until after that moment that we had, I guess, light bulb moments, and we both realized what it was that we wanted to push for and what we wanted to go for in our lives. And I told her that I was going to start doing YouTube videos and teaching people how to do hair and makeup, and she thought it was such a great idea, and she told me how she wanted to be a DJ. And it was at that point that we realized that we do have a goal, and we pushed each other really, really hard to make sure that we did achieve our goal as best as possible. The beginning of my YouTube journey was slow, as most will find. I continued to spread my name through social media and by handing out business cards, and at this point I was getting appointments regularly from repeating customers and customers who were referred by previous customers. It was really amazing seeing the impact I was having on some people. It's crazy because when I started this journey, my goal was to help people feel better about themselves on the outside, which would in turn make you feel better about yourself on the inside. It was around March 2012 when my channel really started to progress, and I noticed it went from a couple thousand subscribers and it was going all the way up to almost 100,000 subscribers. And I remember thinking, how in the world could this happen so quickly, and how are there that many people who really enjoy my videos? It wasn't until I started receiving emails that I realized just what an impact I did have on people. I received an email from a girl who told me that I in a way saved her life because I helped her realize the more beautiful things in life. I helped her become more positive and to look on the brighter side of things. And it was in that moment that I really just had to sit down and take it all in and realize that there are people who are now looking up to me and seeing me as a role model. And I decided to take it and run with it, and continue to help people and continue to tell people my tricks and different things that have helped me and helped me get confident, because I have been through a lot and I do know what it's like to be feeling really low about yourself. It was then that I knew I was, for the first time in my life, right where I belong. I really have grown so much the past year and a half, and I really do owe most of it to you guys. You have been so amazing and so supportive, and honestly such a blessing in my life. You all depended on me when I so badly wanted to give up and helped me get through some of the hardest points in my life. This past year and a half I've had all kinds of ups and downs, ins and outs, back and forths, but one thing I did learn through this whole process is being truly happy in life really does start with being genuinely happy with yourself. I've learned that being honest with yourself and doing good for others really helps build your self-confidence. I've learned that if you try really hard at something you really loved doing, that it is possible to make your dreams come true. I wanted to thank every single one of you, because it was all of you who helped me realize my worth and that I am enough. And I so strongly believe that with all of this newfound love and worth of myself, it made me become a more positive person. It made me look at life a whole lot differently. And honestly, I was so busy with my life and being so focused on doing things to make me happy that I really think for once in my life I was not looking for anyone else to come into my life to make me happy. I was kind of content just doing my thing. But as they say, once you're busy focusing on yourself and doing your own life, that's when the right person will come along. And boy, were they right. Brett came into my life again in October of 2012. We did date a little bit here and there in high school, which if you guys watch the boyfriend tag, I explain all of that. But I really do believe he came back into my life because I finally found me and who I really was. And I think once a person is at that point, you kind of have a glow about you. And I promise you there's something very attractive about someone who is positive and who loves life. And it's a feeling that you want to be around. And I know Brett tells me almost every single day how much I've changed his life for the better because of my positive energy and my positive outlook on life. And as for our future, who knows where we'll be in 5-10 years from now. One thing I do know is Brett and I will be together, hopefully forever, because I only picture my life with him. And I also know that my love for all of you guys is endless and eternal, and as long as you guys want to keep watching my videos, I promise I will keep making them for you guys. One final lesson I just want to leave with you guys is we have to all realize that we live in a very gray world. Not everything will always be black or white. There will be very good days, and there will be very bad days, and there will be mediocre days and days where you feel like you won't live until the morning. But I promise, I have been there multiple times, and I sure as hell know one thing: life is worth the fight. Without the pain and the mess ups, one would never truly enjoy the love and joy that this world has to offer. Take my word and do whatever you please with it. One day I will write a book, because there's so many chapters I have left out because I didn't want this video to be 12 hours long. I just want all of you to know that I thank God for you all every single day, and I will forever be grateful for this gift that I have experienced and I am to this day still experiencing. I love you guys so much, and I hope you enjoyed my Draw My Life tag. I'll see you guys soon.